Welcome. So first of all, I put out on the class website pointers to all the code I gave you so far in class. Okay, so essentially to two things: to the Android code that I'm using in order to communicate with the cloud server, but also all the code I'm using to deploy the cloud server. Okay. The code for the cloud server actually is somewhat valuable, meaning that it does a number of things that are not entirely obvious. Among the things it does are the following. It defines a nice way to use logging for the cloud, and it captures the time zone of the user visiting the site, and it translates automatically all the times between local times to display to web visitors if you want to access via web interface to GMT times when it stores them into the database. Okay, so there are a few tweaks to that. I mean, I know that it seems totally obvious to do that, right? And it's unfortunate that on the web it's actually not obvious to deal with the time zones correctly. So all I'm saying is that there is some value for you in sort of bookmarking that code, and if you need some code to build a backend, that's a good starting point. Otherwise, you will have to redo those things, and it will probably take you some hours, or more than a few hours if you haven't done it before. The problem is essentially that browsers don't tell the server what their time zone is. At most, they tell them what their time is. Okay, but the time and time zone are two different things because the DST change happens may happen in different ways. So in general, if you know that now there are 5 hours of difference between GMT and the device, you don't know the time zone of the device necessarily. Okay, so essentially the time zone detection in the browser is done by some JavaScript that tries to convert back and forth using the browser multiple times at multiple historic intervals. And then he uses some rule in order to decide what's the most likely time zone. So there is, some piece of work that has been done in order to add back a facility that should have been there in the first place in the browser, I guess. Okay. So this is just a comment on that code, I guess. So what I would like to do today is continue working on the bulletin board application. Try to improve it, and essentially also try to weave it together with some better UI. Okay, and in fact, I think I will give the priority to first building a better UI and explaining you things around that, rather than tinkering some more with the backend. Okay, the main drawback of the backend, as I mentioned last time, is that it just stores things at random. And this does not particularly sort them on the way out. Oh, by the way, this I want to say. So I had this error, if you remember, that I didn't want to correct while investigate when I was teaching about my ordering. When I was trying to get the information from ordered in most recent first, it didn't work. Okay, you remember? Maybe you don't. You can look at the video. I got an error when I said order by tilde, date created. The reason is simple, and I want to tell you because you may be bitten by the same phenomenon. When you are on the Google App Engine backend, the data store, essentially to store data, the data store creates an index on each field. So, for example, I can say things like, please give me everything in the world ordered by date. Or I can also say, please give me everybody whose name is Luca. Okay, so searches on single fields happen automatically, okay, as you would expect. But unlike a normal database, you cannot search on 2 fields at a time if you do not create an index on those fields, okay? Because Google Data Store was born out of the idea that it has to scale. And if it doesn't scale, we don't do it. And so they decided not to support any search if there is not a corresponding index to answer the search. So let me see if I still have the code available somewhere. I may not, but let me check. No, this is other code. Yeah, it was here somewhere. Tables and default. Okay. So when I was doing these, okay, notice this search. I was having a search on app ID for equality, and then a search on post date as a way to sort it, okay? I can do this, but I need first to create the corresponding index. And if I had been less in a hurry when I teach, I'm somewhat panicked, as you can imagine. I never want to waste too much time. But if I took the time to read the error message in detail, the error message would have told me exactly which index I needed to create. Okay, it's still there in the logs, the problem. So if you want, I can recreate it and post it on Piazza, okay? But I just wanted to mention these. So you can do searches on multiple fields in the Google Data Store, but only one at a time. So with this said, I will not tinker with it anymore. I guess I can put here still a limit by, but yeah, maybe I should. No, I do it later in the for loop, so it's fine. With this said, I just want to go back to the Android app and use this result, okay? So let's look at it as a short recap. Sorry, when I speak, I always need to. Let me look at a quick recap here. What we're doing is that this returns a list of rows, right? And we use this method from here. When we post a message, we get the latest posts and we return a dictionary in JSON in which messages is equal to L. I like always to return dictionaries in JSON because it's particularly pleasant, in my opinion, to decode them on the Java side. It gives you a generality. Because in this way, if later we want to not only to return a list of messages, but also something else, I don't know what, but for example, I don't know, the weather forecast, whatever, no? We could add another field like a comma, weather is equal to another string, right? So it's easy to extend. And on the Java side, this code, I have to navigate in my many windows. But on the Java side, this code ends up here, right? So here I have a string of messages, a string array of messages. So that's where the JSON decoding will put the content. So this JSON library is kind of nice because it's fault tolerant. I mean, most libraries for JSON are, meaning that if the JSON you receive has extra fields, not only messages, but also weather forecast, the weather forecast is just dropped, okay? But you can still decode the fields you have. Conversely, if you define here not only the messages, but also like, I don't know, the day of the week, and the server does not give you the day of the week, what you get is a null pointer. Okay, so this is why a very nice trick is never to write, if I were to extend these, like int, I don't know, int potato, you know that I like vegetables, right? So, because if you do these, I guess there is a default defined, but I guess if there is a default, it has to be 0, but you wouldn't be able to distinguish between the case in which you were actually given a 0 and between the case in which actually you weren't given anything, right? So the best way is to use always objects, and so to use integer potato. And in this case, you need to check whether potato is null. If potato is null, the server didn't give you any potato. And if the potato is not null, then you know how to decode it. I mean, then you know that you're given one, and then you can use it. Okay. So this match on JSON. So it's tolerant to missing information. Okay. So now we have this main activity here, and the problem is this essentially that when we I'm not sure I'm sharing the screen. Let me just go here, and I always forget one step. Too many steps to get this started. Okay, so the problem is this, that we were getting these messages, if you remember, and we were just concatenating them and just, throwing them in a text view just as a quick way to test the code that is sort of worked. And what I would like now to do is something a little bit better. I would like essentially to, what is that we can do with these? I wanted to display them in a list and put a button next to each message so that you can reply to that, okay? And I'm not sure what to do when we reply to it. I mean, maybe you have some good idea. I mean, we could either quote it and and we can add some text, or we can use it as initial value of the string we will edit, so that, when we decide to reply, something like that, okay? But the first thing I want to do is, instead of displaying these as in a sort of junky format by just concatenating them with commas and throwing them there, building a list. So building a list, in principle, is easy. But it's harder than on the web. So it works in this way. Let me pull up the screen and draw a little bit on the board just a second, and then we. Sorry, okay. Just for our orientation, then we do it in code, okay? But a list view works like this. So you have the phone screen, and you will want to display multiple items. So, for example, text 1, text 2, and put a button on each one. So you want to do something like this, okay? And we'll have a number of these. So Java and Android, they take a very different approach from the web, for those of you who know the web. On the web, you do something like this. You do a loop over all the messages you have, and in the loop, you spit out the HTML that will generate the button. I mean, the TV. Or else, you can use a better framework like Reactive or so, but in which you still define, whenever I have a TV like that, I have to produce this spit out the sector like this, and it into the browser. In Java, it's a little bit different, okay? So you know that everything that is displayed on the screen is a subclass of the view class, okay? So what you do is this. You define a general list view that will encompass the whole area that you want to use. So this will be called a list view, okay? So the general area is the list view, and each one of these things is another view, which is an item, okay? So you need to define some way that does this. If you have an array somewhere, let me put it out. If you have an array of some kind of elements, it's an array inside of the code, right? So for example, it could be whatever they are, a list array or an array list, sorry. This can be an array list. And you need to define some translation to go from the array list to this list of items. So we need to define what is called in Android an adapter. We will see it in code if you want to see it precisely, but essentially there will be an adapter that will be taking an array, and it will explain how to take each element of the array and inflate it into one of these objects. These objects can be complicated, right? You can generate whatever you want as element of the list. For example, the ones we generated, we will have an outside container that inside contains a text view and a button. Okay, so it will be a composite object in general. Okay, think of the people app on your phone. It's the one that that stores your contacts. Then it's even more complicated, right? It's essentially a list view, but each item it has a fairly flexible format because it can contain the photo of the person and then a bunch of information on the side. I mean, you can do them in as free format as you want, basically. All we have to do is define the translation from an array to an item. And so that's what we need to do now in the code. We need to do two things. We first need to define an item, okay, in XML, because this is just, it's not like the whole screen, but it's like a mini screen, right? It's some hierarchy of views. You could define it also in code, but I think it's easier to define it in XML still, okay? So we define this in XML, and then we define the adapter translation inside in the code. Okay, so that's what the program is. And so we do it like this. So I prepared some XML already. I hope it will work well and it will not look too ugly. I had it done in a slightly different way. Maybe we can have both alternatives. But essentially what I did is this. I have a linear layout which has orientation horizontal. A linear layout is something that will put things just one to the side of the other because the orientation is horizontal. Otherwise, it would put them one below the other, okay? I could use other layouts. So the example I had from last year was done with a relative layout. So if I essentially bungle these, I'll try the approach from next year. Or maybe we can try both approaches and see how they look like. But let's start with this one, okay? So, and so inside of the linear layout, I have a text view. Okay, it's very small, I guess, because there is nothing in it. And then there is a button, okay? And that's all there is to it. So there is nothing else than this, okay? Now, in the main activity now, no, I will tell you later how to associate actions to the button, but it's not entirely simple. I mean, no, maybe it is not so hard, actually. I can, but let's associate it later. The problem is this, okay, that I will produce many of these buttons. So we will have to find some way of figuring out which button is which. That's all I'm trying to say. But yeah, we can associate an action with this button if we like. I think actually that's what I do. So now if I go in activity main, so this is the code we had last time. So, we had a very simple button at the bottom. We had an edit text for entering the new message. And then we simply had a text view here that contained the messages all jumbled together, I guess. So what I want to do here is something different. Okay, I want to go, maybe I think it's easier to go into the design view. I want to take this text view. I want to delete it. I wonder if this does it. Yep. And I wanted to put in its place a list view. Containers, list view, okay. I put it centered, align right, center horizontal, yes, that seems like a good idea. Aligned parent top, okay, check. Okay, it's kind of empty. I don't know if I can above edit text, okay, fine. Perfect. Okay, so I sort of, by stretching and pulling, I somehow was able to build this. Maybe I should give it, if I want to make it look a little bit nicer, some bottom margin of, I don't know, like 5 dp. I don't know if I did it. Boh, I don't know. Good enough. Maybe I should have used padding instead. Okay. Where is the padding? Layout, padding. Padding here. So let me put actually some padding. Okay, well, I hope it does it. Otherwise, we can fix it later. Yeah, I'm not so sure. So you see, this essentially is the container, but it does not contain anything inside. Okay, so we need to provide essentially what goes inside it. So the list view is here in the code, and it does not particularly contain anything. It just says where it is and how big it is relative to the rest. Okay, so all the rest is done in code. Okay, so great. Now we go to the code. We move to the main activity, and I need to define some pieces that I'm gonna import from what I was doing last year, actually. Okay, so list element. So here I was essentially defining this. I want to have a list of things that I put into my, to populate the list view. And last year I was having something that had both a text label and a button label. In this case, I don't think I need to do that, okay? But I still have, to give you some more general code, some code that does not simply create a list of strings, but a list of objects. I think it's a little bit more general, because if you want to have a more than a single string associated with each list item, for example, a very common case, if I were to do this for real, would be to associate with each list item not only the text of the message, but also the ID in the database of the message, so that we know which message we are talking about, okay? So I prefer to give it to you in a slightly more general way, and give you this code, okay? So let me copy these. Actually, let me copy a bunch of code and then adapt it. Let me copy all this code and then tell you exactly what it does. So we put it here. So I'm essentially putting it here. Yeah, you see how, you know, when I cut and pasted it, there were a lot of errors and then they went away. It's because I have this auto import set to import all non-ambiguous types, and so it's essentially completing the imports for me. So let's look at it a moment. And now I have this list element class, which is I use a class just as I would use, you know, a record in C++ in this case. So I don't use any methods. I use it just to contain together both the text label and the button label, okay? And I continue to call it text label, even though you know, that's not what I will be doing. Now, I don't know whether I want the button label, but yeah, why not? Let's just leave it there for a bit of fun. Then the important thing is this. I need to define, when I want to display a list, I need to define an array inside my code, an array list in practice, or a list array, whatever they're called, an array list, that contains what will be on the screen. Okay, so the idea is essentially this. I will define an adapter between this array and the screen. Okay, and then when I need to update the screen, I will not actually touch anything. I will simply modify the content of the array, and then I will, in a single comment, I will tell Android, hey, redraw the list again according to the new contents of the array. Okay, that's how it happens. So, but I need to always keep this data structure that sort of corresponds logically to what is displayed on the screen. Okay, so I define it. You need to define it as an activity-wide variable. Okay, not only in a single method. It needs to be always there, basically. So I define this a list. You know, that is my private list of array list of list element. Okay, so this is what will back the list view. Then I start to say, how do I adapt this list to my list view on the screen? Okay, and so I need to define a class, myAdapter, that extends an array adapter of list element. So this is the way it works. Okay, I need to define a subclass of array adapter. Okay, and I need to pass this to say then to the list view. There is a statement later that is crucial that I don't know that I have copied. I don't think so. I still have to copy, but there is this statement here that is incredibly important. Let me do this before I go to the details, okay? This is sort of the crux of what we do. So it's in onCreate. After we set the content view, we need to do this. How did I call my list view? Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, so hold on a moment. I want to go here. Okay, so this list view is simply called the list view. Okay, so when I go to, sorry, when I go to main activity, this is list view. Okay, so before we see what is inside the adapter, let's see how we use it. Okay, I start to say, well, set content view. This says this essentially tells Android what to display as the main view for that activity. Okay, we know this statement. Then we say something like this: I create a new A list. This A list is my array that will back the list view all the time. Okay, I create it and initially it's empty. It will be, so you know, the list view initially will be empty. When we contact the server the first time and we get back the answer, then we know what to put into it. But at the beginning there is nothing. Okay. But then I do this. I say, you know, I define this adapter between the list and the view. And so now the adapter is a class, of course. My adapter is a class. And I need to get an object of that class. Okay? So this object of that class, I call it AA. Okay, maybe it's not the smartest name, but that's how I call it. Okay? And I call it AA. And I instantiate it, okay? This is, you know, a little bit silly in some way, right? Because this is a class of which all I will ever do with it is I will get a single object that I will keep around. It's a bit of this, you know, Java verbosity, essentially. There would be better ways probably of doing it in other languages, right? What I really will care is not that I have a class of which I make many objects. Essentially, this class myAdapter is just a way to package together a few functions, okay? But because this is Java, I need to get an object of that class before I can do anything, okay? So I get an object of this class, okay, and I pass to this, when I build this object, I pass the activity, because this AA will need to do, this adapter needs to do a lot of stuff. It needs to, take text and essentially creates pixels that will be on the screen. So it needs to have now the activity, because it needs to know how to access all these services. Luckily, we don't have to worry about how, but that is why it needs to know the activity. And then it needs to know two things. The list that contains the content, and it needs to know how do we inflate it, into what, right? So, these two pieces. This is the list where the content is, and it needs to know the XML defining each item, okay? There are alternative ways of defining adapters. As I told you, you can also define how to build an item directly in code. I don't think, I think the way I'm doing is the most common, but if you want, you can also use other ways, okay? So these are the arguments of an adapter. Then I say, I grab my list view as usual. So, this usual code to grab something. And then I say, hey, list view, this is how you will be filled. Okay, this adapter is what fills your elements. Okay? And then I need to give this command, AA, notify dataset changed. So the adapter is not running all the time. Okay, there are frameworks on the web that are running all the time in such a way that if you modify some data, automatically they realize it via hooks essentially, and auto update what you see in front of your eyes. But an array adapter like this is not automated. Okay, basically there is nothing that prevents you from these to go out of sync with that. Okay, you can modify this. So after you modify these, or after the first time you have connected the two, you have to say, please update the screen according to the content of the data structure. And you do it by doing this explicit call. In practice, it will not be hard to do it. Every time we change the array, we have to remember to call this notify dataset changed. And it's pretty easy to do, okay? So, but there is no automatic, hook mechanism so that Android self realizes that thing has changed. So this gives us the context of how to use the adapter. And now we need to look at the structure of the adapter itself, and we can modify it to our wishes, okay? And so if you want me to do something different, let me know and we can do it. But essentially, we need to define the creator, okay? And this is pretty much boilerplate. This is code that, you basically copy over from one thing to the other, and I think I must have copied it, from the Android, examples in the official documentation or something like that, okay? So I'm not modifying the creator. In fact, I don't even know, I know why. I think the only reason why I needed to say this public myAdapter at all might have been simply because of this type, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happens, or if it would be fine if I simply deleted these and I relied on the superclass. I haven't tried it, okay? It came to my mind only now, frankly. Now, the important method to override is this getView. GetView is used in the following thing. I just give you a little bit of context. So a list view can be very long. For example, in my contact list, because I've used Gmail for a long time, I must have, well over a few thousand people, okay? So on the web, this is one of the advantages. On the web, if I did a list of 100 things, these 1,000 things would be all in the browser at the same time, okay? So that if you are on a desktop, you basically don't notice, because you get a very long web page and you can scroll through it and you're fine, okay? Because the desktops have a lot of memory. But if you are on a mobile phone, actually the browser slows down considerably, because it has to essentially, you are looking only at 10 people at a time, perhaps. But it's remembering all the 5,000 people that maybe you might have in the list, okay? So for example, if you go to nicely made websites, such as, well, I haven't looked too much at their code, but Pinterest Instagram or all these kind of sites do something a bit more sophisticated. So you think you are looking at an incredibly long list of images, but actually the browser uses some fairly sophisticated code to say, oh, this picture is too far away from where the user is looking. Let's forget about it, so that I save memory in the browser, okay? And so the browsers are doing all this complicated websites explicitly have to do all this complicated management. And there are plugins for the web. In Android, luckily, list view does it for you. So list view is a very complicated piece of code. In fact, I think that they are planning to replace it by something a bit simpler inside, okay? But the way it works is this. It has the knowledge of where you are looking, and it has the array. And then dynamically on demand, it decides which of these list views to fill in with what content. Okay, and if you scroll too far down, these a buddy that used to be with us at UCSC as faculty, as it was the first in many contact lists, I guess. Okay, this buddy, woo, as you scroll down to look at Zuckerman, the buddy will be recycled. Okay, the view containing this item will be recycled. Recycled, I mean literally. So the simple way to do it would be this, that you eliminate all references inside Java to that item view, so that you rely on the Java garbage collector. But actually, list view is smarter than that, because it's not a great idea in Java to continually allocate and deallocate objects. Because if you do that, sooner or later, the garbage collection will slow down your code. Okay? So what the list view inside does is this. There is this element for a body, and this scrolls up. And now list view will think, now a body is 50 positions up. I don't know how much. They do it inside. I don't know how many they consider to be enough. Essentially, so that it's unlikely that immediately you will put it back into view. Okay. So when a body is say 50 positions up, they take this list view. They take this item view. Okay, this is a view. They take this view here and they say, okay. I don't need it for a body anymore. Let me use it now for Davidson, which may be the person that needs to scroll in here, for instance, right? So they take the same element, okay? They take the same Java object and they replace the content inside it. So this is, I explain it to you for two reasons. First, because I think it's good to be aware of these techniques that are used to make things efficient. But also because specifically in the code of the list view, we actually have to worry about this recycling. So we do, unfortunately, have to worry about two cases. When we have to produce a list, an item, we have to worry about two cases. One in which we have to produce it from scratch, and another in which we have to essentially recycle it. And we'll see how, okay? So anyway, so this get view is what it produces a view, and is the function that we need to override to specify how to fill in each item. And we give it a position, and then there is this convert view and a parent. So the parent is used because when you inflate a view, when you produce this view, you need to put it somewhere on the screen. And so they give you the parent view where you must attach these. I think it's easier to see how the code is done than to do it in theory. Okay, so. First of all, we do this. Since we are given the position, we can fetch the element of the array corresponding to that position. So we do we use this get item of position. Okay, and this gives us where is defined get item defined? Now I don't remember. Okay, get item is one of these in its own methods actually. So this is how you are supposed to get the right element. Okay, so inflate a view if necessary. This is exactly the place where we distinguish the case between the recycling and not recycling. So convert view is it can be either null if there's nothing to be recycled, or it can be the old view if you can recycle it. So if they give me something that is if you give me something that is empty, then I build these. I build a new linear layout okay, I inflate this linear layout, okay, and I get a new view. Okay, so let's look at it a moment. If I don't get any view to convert, I need to create a new linear layout, then do the get the inflating service, which is the service that transforms you know, a view into a real view object. Okay, I build a layout inflator. You know, there is always this boilerplate code essentially, and then finally I inflate my my view. Okay. Okay, I mean, I cannot fully explain this code because it's sort of, you know, tied into the you know, this resource is something that you are passed in the adapter. Essentially, this is how you build you build this in the proper place. Essentially, you have to replace this code, and that will work for you. Okay, but otherwise, if you are not given a view already, then you essentially sorry, if you are given already a view, then you can just reuse it. Okay. So once you get a new view, we have to fill it, and so here is where we have to change it. So you know, there is a text view and the button. And I changed the names, I guess, so I need to fix it. So the button is called, what did I do? Sorry, I clicked on something wrong and it went, okay. I don't actually like the name button list. How we should call it? Or maybe button list is fine. Because it's not a list of buttons. What is it? It's a post button. Okay, post button. No, but it doesn't post, but like it's an item button. Okay, this is what it is, and this is this text view is here is like this is an item text. Okay, so let me give some more reasonable names to these two pieces: item text and item button. Now, if I go back in the code, I need to get these. So these two lines look almost normal, but there is a somewhat of a difference. So normally we always say find view by ID. In this case, we need to say new view dot find view by ID. What is happening and why do we do this? If we say find view by ID without saying anything else, so the search happens from the root view of the screen. And this is what we have done so far, and it has always been enough, okay? Because we have defined the hierarchy on the screen statically, and so, you know, we say, you know, hey, find the view that has this ID. But if you think at it a moment, once we go into a list element, there is a lot of things that have exactly the same ID item text. This item text is an integer in the end. Every list item will have the same ID. So which text and which button do I want to find? If I say simply find view by ID, very funny errors would happen to you, because you would essentially find one at random of the things in the list view you are displaying, and you wouldn't know exactly which one. Okay, so you cannot do that. You have to say search only in the element that I'm inflating now. So search starting from the new view that I just created above. Okay, so that will give you essentially not any button and any text, but it will give you the button and the text of the element you are trying to build. Okay, so the difference is small, but I know it because I got it wrong the first time I was doing these, and you know, you go nuts for some amount of time, because you get you know, that everything works when you have only one element, obviously, because there is only one thing of that kind. When you have two, you get it sometimes wrong, and you know, the probability of getting it right decreases the more elements you have, and you cannot figure out why, because of course it doesn't give you any error, right? Because when you say find view by ID, it just finds it. It just finds the wrong one, and so you are updating the wrong piece on the screen, essentially. Okay? So now we can get the text view on the button, and then we can set this text and on the button and in the string according to this element W that we got from our array. Okay, so you see the array had these fields above, text label and button label, and I'm just using them here to set up what I have in my list view. So this is easy, and this is just, in no cause and works, sort of understandable. Okay. Now the problem is this. Let me see what I'm trying to do here. So here I'm doing. So there are multiple ways of doing this. Okay, and so that's why I'm reading the code, because I don't remember exactly what I chose last year. But essentially, this is one of the cases in which some, adding a listener to a button in the code might make sense. But first of all, there is a little bit of an issue, and it's not a big deal, but there is this issue here. That is, you have a lot of buttons, they all look the same, but you need to know which one gets pressed. Okay, so how do I distinguish the various buttons? Even if I attach a listener to each button, there is no very sort of super nice way to say exactly which button I've clicked if I don't do anything special. So the easy way to do it is this. Before I define the listener, I set a tag to the button. B is my button. I set a tag that contains a W text label. Actually, here I want to change it a little bit. I think, it might be easier to say that position. Okay. So let me change this code to have a little bit of fun. So essentially, I'm tagging each button with a position in the list. This is a fairly flexible approach, because then when somebody will press on the button, that I attach the listener encoder, that I say on click and I associate with a function, once I get to the button view, I will be able to say, hey, what's your tag? Then I will use it as a tag. I will use the tag to access the index, the array index of the corresponding position, and from there I'm in good shape, because I know which position you clicked on, and I can do anything I ever want. Okay, so that's the way to do it. In this case, I know that on Piazza somebody was asking why attaching listeners to buttons in code with respect to doing it in XML. Normally, if it's a static object in the view, I attach it in XML because it's faster. But if I create stuff dynamically, I often attach it in this way. I think I haven't verified, but I'm pretty sure that this would work even if I said an Android on click in the XML. So I don't know why I wrote the code in this particular way in the good old times, okay? But this also works, essentially. So I tell you, it's basically equivalent. The only trick is to associate a tag to the button, so that then you know what you click on. Okay, great. So in this case, I say set a non-click listener to the button B, which is a new on-click listener. And when we click on the view, I do something silly, but is fairly convenient. That is, I simply get the integer tag of the button, and I don't do it actually. This comment is wrong. So, but let me do it then. So int, I don't know. Well, actually, string s is equal to string of vget tag. Okay. I don't know whether this works in Java. I mean, probably knows how to cast integers to strings. I never know the rules of when it complains and when it doesn't. And then I make a toast. What is a toast? A toast is this very useful thing that Android does, okay? It's this brief display of a small amount of text. It's a very convenient thing to do, by the way, and you may want to remember it for your applications. A toast is defined by a duration and the content and the context. So the context is simply used to tell it, you know that by now that whenever you do something to the screen, you need to give it a handler to the screen. So that's what the context does. But we have two toast lengths, short and long, and they are very useful for displaying these very short messages. You know, most super refined apps prefer to define their own format for flashing messages on the screen. But you know, toasts are very convenient and very standard. Of course, I could just log it, I guess, you know, but here I think I had a bit of fun doing a toast. And so we learn how to do toasts, okay? So this will be very, very simple. It will give us a list, and when you click on the button, it will simply tell us what is in the, you know, the integer of the button we clicked. So, you know, super non-sophisticated. Great. Now, the only thing that I haven't done is that I defined the adapter, I defined everything, but I don't put anything in the list, and I don't say when to update the screen. So I need to do these two minor things. So, because this is a simple example, I want to do the following. When we get back the message from the server, I want to when we get back the message from the server, I wanted to put those into a list, okay? So you remember that we had this post message specification that uses the result and the string is the result. So let's look at it a moment. The result is the string that we got back from the server. What I do is this, I log it, then I create a new JSON object in order to decode from the JSON that is inside it. Okay, I build a message list ML, which is the result of decoding these into the message list class. The message list, you know, is this simple list we saw before, right? So we decode it, okay, and at this point here, I want to replace this code here, because here we have a message list. Okay, and what I want to do is fills the AA array. No, it's not the AA. How do I call it? Sorry. Sorry, I need to go up a moment. Oh, it's a list. Okay, so this is my list of list elements. Okay, and it's also the one that is cited in here. When I set the adapter, when I created the adapter is from a list. So I need to now fill a list. Fills a list, so we can fill the list view. Okay. So here, I guess I might as well. No. So first of all, I have to empty it. A list dot clear. No. So I delete whatever might have been already in this list, because I want to redo it from scratch. Okay. Now I can keep this loop in which I loop over all the things that I received, but instead of doing this, okay, I say I don't know, a element is equal to new list element. Sorry, list element. So okay, this is a bit horrible. Yeah, this is slightly less horrible. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So I create a new list element. Then I have to fill it in, and I say AEL dot text label is equal to ML dot get. No, sorry. ML messages dot. Oh, yeah. So I can just do this. Yeah. I never remember when I just use the square parentheses or get. I mean, in Java, it totally confuses me. There are too many ways of doing the same thing. But they don't all work. That's the problem. So now AAL that button label. So the problem is this. Okay, I cannot leave this empty. Because if I leave this empty, I will get essentially a null pointer exception, right? Because in the code where I populated the list view, I will assume that this is a string, I guess. Or I'm not sure, but I think I guess. So what do we want to put here? Yeah, but then we get blank buttons. So they're kind of ugly. Sorry? Yeah, I don't know. I wanted something a little bit more interesting. I don't know. Okay, let's do it silly for the moment. Okay, so we can say like click. Whatever. Okay, so we can decide later. I mean, this is just as an example. Okay, so now we populate. No, we haven't populated anything. Now we have to say a list dot add al. Okay, so we put this element at the end of the list. Okay, now I still haven't done anything. So if you do this, you would see absolutely no effect. And this is because now we need to tell the adapter, hey, replace the content of the list view with what is currently in this array. So we have a.notify dataset changed. This autocompletion is really handy. And so these will have the right effect. Okay, so this should populate the list view if you haven't done anything wrong. And I'm crossing all my fingers. Notice that an array list has other things that you can do to it. I mean, it's an array list. A list view has many methods. In fact, you should explore them. But just to mention some of them, one thing that I don't really know is this. Suppose that you have a list of 100 long, and you scrolled it to the middle of it, position 50, say. And now suppose I say that the array list changed. I don't know if it's specified how Android reacts, whether it will then put you at the beginning or leave you in position 50, position 50 still exists. But at any rate, if you want to take control of it, there are methods that do it. Essentially, if you have a list view, you can say, hey, please go to this position. And in fact, you have two ways of going to a position. You can jump to a position, in which case immediately that's what's displayed, and you basically don't see any animation. Or you can also say that you should navigate to that position in such a way that the scrolling is smooth. Okay, so if I wanted to do it, I would have to do it in the list view. So I just show you the methods a moment that they exist. Okay, but here I'm not gonna do it. But you can say my list view dot, and it has a bunch of methods. Okay, and you see smooth scroll by offset, or smooth scroll to position. So these animate smoothly going to a position, okay, which can be very nice in some occasions. For example, suppose that you search in this list. You search for L, U, C, and now you know that Luca is at position 25. You may not want to jump to that position. It may be nicer to smoothly scroll, right? You can create these animations. Or, oh, sorry, I clicked on something. I lost it. Or you can do, I lost it. Set position, you say. I'm sure. Set selection. Yeah, I'm sure that there is somewhere here. Okay, but there are quite a few methods. Okay, set select. Where is it? Set selection from top? No. Well, okay, fine. I mean, maybe we can find it by saying set set selection in position. Okay, so there are all these methods. So sometimes you get the right behavior by just saying a notified dataset changed. But if you want to do more sophisticated things, you actually have pretty good control of what happens. Okay, so now let's try to run this code, I guess. Let me see if I still have a device. Yes. Okay. Oh, look. Wow. I think it may be safer to just restart it. It's maybe the acceleration, that's funny. It's working.
So one of the things that I noticed about this class is that, is that obviously, we're learning about all these different things to do with Android. As far as assignments go, the only thing that I've seen thus far was the poster assignment which we made,
Yes. So I'll give you now another one, yeah.
And that was pretty much the only thing. Like, I don't want to, that was pretty much the only thing that really assigned, right?
Yes, that's right. So you have done, if you have done it, you're okay.
I'm just worried that, I'm just starting to get worried if everything is some assignment.
No, you're not missing. I'm going to post one today, but I haven't posted another one. I wanted to post one that ties essentially together a bit of server access with a list view. So, the assignment will be somewhat similar to what I'm doing here. So details have to be changed, but I will give you this code. You can play with it. You will have to modify the list view. You will have to, modify maybe the way you talk to the server, and you have to put together a similar application. So this is essentially assignment 2, okay? So now you know it. Yeah.
And I forgot, what was the exact name of the protocol that we're using to make requests to the server? It's called JSON.
JSON, yes. JSON. But you don't have to touch the server. I will give you the server that just works, okay? Because this class is on Android, so. Okay, so I don't know whether this is the new or the old one. I guess we will find out. Banana post. It works.
Why?
You're asking why?
Yeah, it actually works.
Yeah, no, it's surprising. Don't you feel this cringe in the stomach whenever you try your own code because you're almost sure that it will fail? So now if I click here, I knew it, right? What did I just say? So evidently there is we do something silly in okay. Java lang integer cannot be cast to Java lang string. It's my ability with typecasts. And it's because we are not getting an integer. So this is a problem. Okay, it's right here. So set tag is a function that takes an object. Okay? So it does not take an integer. It takes objects. Any object you ever want. So you can set a tag as a string. You can set a tag as a whatever you want. And I gave it an integer. But the integer I gave it is an int, is not an object of the class integer with capital I. Okay? And so Java helpfully thought, this guy is giving me an integer with lowercase, one of these like trivial integers. Let me convert it into an object of the right type before I put it into the tag. Because the tag wants an object, not a poor pedestrian integer. And so this was converted into an integer with a capital I. Okay, so to do it a little bit better, I think, because I don't really like this, but I really would like to cast it my way, okay? So I cast this into an object the way it should be. And when I do this, I don't say the typecasting that way, but this is an integer, and I call the toString method of it. This one, what? This? Yes, it's because I'm used to Python. I'm very sorry. I think I need a new. And I'm told all the time, by the way, there is a thing that people tell me that I should be doing. No, let me add, no. The way I'm supposed to be doing is this, be set tag. I don't do it, okay, because I think it's just crazy. But you should use integer dot get integer of position. I think this would be the kosher way of doing it, the proper way, with a new. Sorry? No, I don't want to get in it. But what is a function that recycles an integer, actually? Okay, fine, I don't find it. Okay, fine, I'll look it at later. There is some idea, but I don't remember the function because I decided that it was too silly for me to bother. But there is some idea that instead of creating a new class for each integer, you should first check if you happen, I mean, a new object for each integer. You should first check whether you have already an object that contains that integer and use that instead, okay? And I always find that this to be one of the craziest optimizations that I've ever seen, and so I don't pay any attention to it. Okay, so, but at any rate, so these should work. Okay, so let's try whether it really works or not. But you see how pleasant the other messages are, right? I mean, they really tell us fairly directly what's wrong. I think it's trying to run, or did I click it? Yeah. Okay, banana. Okay, now I click here, and this tells me 2. Okay, so it's not very incredible what it does, no? But if I click here, it tells me 1, and this is the element 0. And notice that I can scroll, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so this works. Okay. So great. At this point, we can take a short break, and you can think that if you want me to modify or do other things with this list view. And otherwise, I want to essentially explain you some other simple things that are around this app that I think are very worth knowing in general. But okay, so let's take a short break.
So I didn't really expect people to be there, but I was there.
Yeah. Sorry? I'm gonna sign today. Yes. Yes. Okay. No, but it will not be good. Okay. All right. Let me set up this.
For the question to actually just
I see. Yes. Can you? Do you have the AI clicker?
I forgot today. They're waiting me to like type my
Send me an email. Just send me an email.
okay.
That's I think the easiest. Okay.
Thanks.
Let me. So sorry. One moment.
like a new version of the attendance app that I should be using? Because I've used it before.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a problem with it. Now it's like.
Yeah. So yeah, let me make an announcement.
Okay.
So I admitted that I essentially messed up one thing that I still need things for the presence app. So today, you know, today let's not count presence because it's on me that I messed up essentially. So from next time I will begin again, okay? And I will put on Piazza a link to a new app that you have to download. Essentially, the problem is that I had to unpublish the one to the App Store, and so I cannot tell you to use that. So I will have to publish it again. So.
Would it be, if you wanted to make it so self-applicable without a button, would you make an invisible button?
I think I can just listen to the clicks on the list element.
And that would make the
Yeah,
entire thing.
yeah.
I guess if you wanted to have like a custom
Yes.
area, then you would
Yes. So his question is very good actually. So his question is, what would you do if you wanted to just be able to click on the whole element of the list? Okay, and I think you can just add a click listener to the whole thing, not only to the button. Okay, so we can also try to do that. In fact, so let me try a moment to do it for you on the fly. This whole thing is called. Actually, does not have a name. Does it have a name? No, it does not have a name, this linear layout. But I think I can do better than this. Because suppose we are here, okay? In get view. This is get view, so this is where, you know, we are inflating the list element. So let's look at it a moment. I fill it in, okay? Then I fill in the text for the button, and then I set an on-click listener, okay? And then now here we can say set a listener for the whole list item, okay? I don't think there is anything that prevents us from doing that. And so what is the name of this whole list item? It's called new view, right? It's this new view thing that we're about to return, okay? So we can do new view, set on click listener, new view dot on click listener, okay? And here I can open, and this will close. Okay, override, and then I can say, public void on click of view v. Okay, and so now I can decide what to do. So what do I want to do? So one of the problems, I think it's a silly problem, but it's one of the problems, is that now I just know that you clicked on the item, but I don't know what item and what was in there, right? Because I don't have any tag directly on this list item. So if I wanted to do it in a semi-smarter way, I would have to do something like, you know, new view dot set tag. I like to set tags because you see, if the type is that you can just associate any object, okay? And so you're really free to attach whatever you want. So what do we want to attach as tag? I don't have a very good idea, but just to try, you know, we can say string. No, well, I don't need to say string, but I want to say, oh, let me just be quick, right? So W text label. So I'm essentially attaching as a tag the text itself that is displayed, just as a shorthand, you know, to put some tag to it. So when I'm here, now I want to repeat some of this code, okay? Just because I'm lazy and I want to get done very fast. Okay, and so I still need to get the tag and translate it to string, because in theory get tag gives me an object back. So I think this is better. Okay, so and I make a toast of the tag. I think there is nothing else than that. I think that's all I need to do really. Okay, so this should work. And so I can try it. And now, in the old app, if I click on onions, nothing happens. Now we should see onions in a pop-up. So let's see whether it's true. Many things work in theory, but then there is some funny thing in the reality. But let's see whether this actually works. So, Pierce. Okay. Onions. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this works. You can attach listeners how you want. Okay. So you don't need buttons, essentially, if you don't want them. A list view can be complex. You can attach photos, you can attach many things to it, essentially. So this paradigm of defining, the data structure, how it is displayed, and the adapter is very common. Essentially, whenever you have to fill a structure that has an arbitrary number of elements, in Android you will have to define an adapter. Okay. And so for another instance is the spinner. The spinner is this thing that, like the one you use to choose your account in the app I gave you, okay? That's a spinner. And also there, I have defined, in order to create that spinner, a list of strings, which is a list of strings of your account. Then there is a spinner, and then I define an adapter from an array of strings and the spinner. It's simpler than in this case because I have only one field to fill, but it's the same exact principle. Okay. Notice that in some cases it's also possible to define a list view statically. So instead of defining it in this way, you can actually give it the list of views that should fill it. But I've never seen it done actually. It's not the typical use at all, and so this is the typical way. Okay. Okay, so what can we? Okay. Hey. Oh yes, no, it's only that it doesn't scroll using 2 fingers like my Mac. That's why I was stuck. Okay, so what else do I want to tell you? So. I wanted to go back and look at some of the things that I do here. So one of the things that is useful is to remember something from one run to the other of the application. So essentially, let's look at what happens. If I go here, and then I ask which applications are running, okay, I see that I have this bulletin board running. So it's still here, okay? It's not deleted yet. So for example, if I scroll to the end of it, no? If I scroll to the end of it, what did I do? I locked the screen. Or I crashed the device. I think I crashed the device, but I don't think it's a bug on my part. Sorry? Yeah, I think it just crashed. So, but this is good for what I wanted to tell you, because the problem is that if I start again the app, I'm here. Essentially, this does not remember the posts. Okay, so there is this question, how do you remember information in an app? I mean, where do you store it? So far, I've told you how to create variables that are specific to an activity. Okay. So these variables that are specific to the activity have a lifespan that is equal to the activity lifespan. And when the activity changes or is deleted, or you reboot the phone, or whatever changes, the value of those variables is lost. And so now we have here an empty array. So suppose you want to remember the messages you received the last time, so that when the phone comes back to life, you can actually display them immediately, even before you ask the server, okay? And then when you post a new message, you will get the new list. But in the meantime, you want to see the old messages. How would you do that? There are two approaches to storing information. One that I will describe later is to really create a database and store the information in a database. So Android has an interface to this simple database called SQLite, and we can create a table, put information, fish it out, search, and do all the things we want to do. And this is very nice, but also, much overblown compared to, what the simple needs might be of us storing information. Okay, so there is another approach. Yeah.
Is this SQLite built in to get it smaller?
No, it's built in. Not only is it built in, but there are some Java facilitators that do a lot of sort of under the hood nice things for you, like they created a database if it doesn't already exist. They manage upgrades from one version of the app to another, and they do all this sort of low-level cleanup. That's very nice. So I will talk to you about SQLite in another class, but how do you otherwise store information permanently? A very simple solution is this. There is in Android. Let me look here, okay? Because now I will want to store this list of preferences, okay? So there is this. There is a data structure that is called preferences. Essentially, the preferences. Let me first explain and then implement it in the code. Essentially, the preferences are a mapping between strings and data of simple type. Let me put it this way. I forgot exactly all the types that you can put in a preference, but I think you can put at least a string, an integer, a list of strings, a list of integers, floating point, and booleans. Okay? You can at least put these various objects, maybe a few more, but I don't think so. Okay, so it's fairly limited. But if you need to store configuration parameters, you know that many Android apps, most all of them, have some settings, right? You can, set what your account name is, and maybe you can store the preference of whether you want the images to be large or small, and maybe there is this other thing. So all this permanent information that stays with the app is stored in what is called preferences. But you can store what you want in preferences. And so preferences end up being this very flexible mechanism for you to store everything. Now you wonder, well, not really everything, because I cannot store my complicated data types, etc. Well, you can, because if you manage to translate your complicated data types into JSON, not to send it over the wire, but just to store it, okay? Then you can use JSON as a way to get your data structure, translate it into a big string, put it into the preferences, and then you can read it back. So I will explain you the database later, but you can wonder, when is it that I should use preferences and when is it that I should use a database? My rule of thumb is this. If you have a lot of data so that you only need a piece of the data at a time and it's important to search, use a database. So for example, for the People's app, okay, what they really do is that they use a database, not a list. They don't have like a big list. And so I haven't explained it to you because I didn't want to get to that. But in the real People's app in the Android, the adapter is not between a list and the screen, but it is between a database query that is running and the screen. Okay, it's another type of adapter. It works basically very similarly. You can say, give me result number I of my query, right? And then it works in a similar way. But for things like the People's app or these kind of things, it's much better to use a database. If instead, you have this old information like account name, this and that, etc., or settings, then you have to read it all. There's not a lot of information. You might as well just put it in the settings, which is infinitely easier. Okay, so let's do it. So what I want to do is that the app, I want to store it so that now if I say banana, this is the behavior I want to get. If I post a banana now, I get a lot of stuff. Then if I do this, and I close the app. And I close the app, hoping not to crash the system yet another time. If I open my app again, how did I call it? Yeah, but where is it? Oh, here. Okay, you see it's empty. No, and so instead I want to have what I had the last time. It's very simple. Okay, so the first thing is this. You know, the simplest thing, because we have JSON already ready, not to waste time, I will use the same format I received from the server to put it into a string. Why not? You know, I have it already in that format, I might as well. So I need to define a string constant here. This is for my account. And I'll create another one, like to remember the posts we received. Okay, so public, I don't know why public, but static final string. I call them pref underscore pref, I don't know, posts is equal to, and here, this is like a key in a hash table, essentially, okay? So you can, so pref posts is good enough, no? Now we need to decide when do I store stuff there. And I have two choices. I can store it every time, or I can store it only when you close the app. And it doesn't really matter. Okay? So what do? I have no idea, actually. So tell me one of the two. When should I store it? Every time I get it? Okay, fine. It's slightly suboptimal, but I follow his wish, okay? Because if you do it, you are actually writing to flash memory. And so this slows down by an epsilon the display of the app. So maybe actually no, let me follow my guts and put it in on pause. By the way, let me tell you some secret about these on resume and on pause methods. These are the methods, if you remember, when you start an activity, there is on create, on start, on resume. And when the activity goes away, there is symmetrically on pause, on stop, on destroy. Okay? Now, the secret of these methods is that they have to call super. Okay? They have to call their super. And they have to do it in a special order. Because if you are resuming, first you call super, first super, then do stuff. Okay? If you are doing an on pause, first you do your stuff, and then you call do super. If you do it in the wrong order, bad things happen. And if you forget to do it, it crashes. Okay? It crashes with an error message that says, hey, you forgot to call super from on pause. These are the stupid error messages, you know? I mean, if you knew it, you could do it for me, but no, it doesn't, okay? Because the language doesn't work in that way. It realizes too late that you haven't called it, basically, I guess. Okay, so in on pause, we stop the upload if any, and then we store the current list of messages. Oh, I see why you want to do it as soon as received, because it's ready. Ha, my TA is smarter than me. Okay, let me follow what he says, because he's smarter.
Wait, why?
Okay, why? Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to take this A list and translate it into JSON. But A list is not directly JSON at that point. So I would have to iterate on it, create again a list of messages received from the server and translate it via JSON. If you want, I can do it. Would you like me to do that? Otherwise, the TA is smartly suggesting that if I'm already given the list because it arrives from me from the server, I might as well simply write that. I can do either. Which one would you like me to do? Okay? Yeah, let's take his advice. Then we can mess with it later. Okay, so this is where we use the result. Okay, and so now here, for instance, I can say stores in the settings the last messages received. Okay, and so I can say right. I usually cut and paste it. So if so you know, I'm really bad at these because I so much cut and paste it that I forgot entirely how it is done. do I have it in some other place that I thought I was using these preferences in some code. I don't know if I cut it out. So, I think it was here somewhere. Okay, so. Strange. Okay, fine. Let's reinvent it. Okay, can you help me a moment searching how to reinvent it? Because sorry, I'm just trying to find the right app. This is not the right app. This is the right app. Okay, bulletin board. Sorry, I thought I had it already, because we have to say get shared preference of, and I don't know if I can. And here there is a default preferences. So how it is called? There is a dot. No, there is a way to get the default ones. Oh boy. Sorry, let me look in another place. Okay, so this is how to do it. Okay. So we are again in the bulletin board. Sorry, I have some problems with keys. Oh, it's because I'm in the wrong app. Okay. Okay. So why does it let me do this? Oh, yes. So this is a prototypical example of trouble, okay? So the way you get preferences is that you say, preference manager get default shared preferences, okay? This is what I was essentially discussing with the TA. So let me explain. In theory, you can have many sets of preferences that you call with a special string names. So you can have the preferences for the network, the preferences for the colors of the screen, and yada yada. So this is the way essentially that if you need a big app with multiple people that contribute code, instead of stomping on each other's feet because you have only one set of preferences and you're all writing and reading from the same set, and so you have to be careful not to reuse the same name twice, for instance, okay? You can define multiple sets of preferences, but here we don't care so much. And we just want to say, hey, give me the default ones. You have to imagine that these preferences essentially will be mapped inside Android into a file on disk. Android has a protected portion of flash memory for each application, okay? And so these preferences will be files close to the root of these file system, okay? And the default preferences has a name that I forgot, but it's sort of the default name. But if you create other preference sets, they will correspond to files with the different names. And so you can avoid trampling on each other, okay? So here I want to get the default preferences. But so Android needs to do this. It needs to say, hey, the default preferences are this file that belongs to my app. Who am I? What's my app? No? And it knows which app it is, because you need to give it a reference to this usually. But what you need to give a reference is to the activity that called it. Now this is not well defined here. And so this is exactly why I pass around the context. You know, when I created the user result, I pass around the context. That will tell this thread that has been first gone and as a non-UI thread and then re-emerged in the UI, this will tell the thread, you know, hey, this is your context, this is the activity that created you, and so you have to use this if you want the shared preferences. So instead of these, I have to use context here. Okay, and this will work. Okay. Now, once I get the preferences, I need to get an editor for editing the preferences. Why? Well, you know, because that's the way it works. Then at this point, I can put values into this editor, and you can put values that have the form, you know, tag value. So here I put the pref posts, okay, and as value I can put one of these simple types like string, integer, etc., and you know, I just put result. It's not very clean what I'm doing. Okay, it's not the best way to do it. The problem is that the server could have thrown at me a list of garbage. That's the problem, okay? So in this case, I would be storing garbage. So I do this because it's a class and I want to be quick, but it's not a very great approach. Let me say that, okay? So then I commit it. At this point, I've stored what I had, okay? Now I need to do the other way of around this. So I need to make sure that when the app starts, I read this, I de-JSONize it, and I you know, use it in the proper way. And since we have already this, okay, so what does this function do? What does this piece do actually? This piece here, okay? This piece here, it takes a result and it translates it back to the screen, okay? So since I need it often, I put it into some function that I can reuse, okay? And I can say something like, you know, private display result, string result, okay? And inside here, I can put that piece I cut and pasted. Okay, so yeah, right. Private void. Okay, so here I can simply say at this point, display result of result. Okay, always try to avoid repeating code. Now that I have display result, where do I put it? In on resume. Okay, so let us display the previous posts, if any. Okay, so now I have to again get to the preferences. Okay, so I have to copy this line here. Okay, sorry for the back and forth, but I need to do this. So I get to the shared preferences, and not with context, but in this case, because I am in the main you know, flow, I can say this. So once I get the shared preferences, I can say string result. This is the previous result, obviously, right? But it's settings dot get. You see that you have get methods for all the various types that this supports. You can get a string, get a boolean, get a float. So you have to be careful. If you put something in as an integer, you have to fish it out as an integer. Otherwise, you get problems, obviously. Okay, but we know that what we put in is a string. And the name is called the pref posts, okay, sorry, pref posts. And then if you want, you can say what is the default value that you get out of it. If I don't say anything, in the case of string, the default value will be, why doesn't it like it? Maybe I really have to say null. Yeah, okay, fine, you have to say it explicitly. Now, this gives me result or null. If result is different from null, okay, and then display result of result, okay, and this should do it. Yeah, I think that's all I need to do. So let's try it. Still running. So now it's switching up. Funny, I thought it would start again the new app immediately. Oh yeah, it does, it's just slow. Okay, so I'm feeling anything with the bananas. Let's see. So now I get these. Fine. So now I do what I did the other time. That is, I exit from the application. I go here. I delete it. Okay, so now it's not running anymore. I go here. Wake up. Okay, I start it again. Bam, and I get exactly what I had. I don't get myself in the same position. Okay, if I want to also leave the position exactly as it was, I would have to store the position, and this would not be very difficult. What I would do, I mean, I don't do it because we are out of time, but I would essentially define another preference that I would call ref position. Before, when I do on the resume, in this case, I would need to do it in on the pause. In on pause, I would say list view give me your position. I would store it there, and in on resume, I would pick it out and put it back. Okay, so the same principle applies. Okay. No, because I know due to the elements of being broken.
Have you not written up multiple like services and activities yet?
No, I have not. This is what I want to do next time.
I thought you were getting at that. I wasn't sure if if you talked about it yet.
No. Yeah, I'm doing it slightly different.
You're just checking on the app. You didn't do it.
No, today I'm not taking attendance because the app, I took some problem with the app, and so I need to give you again the app. Yes.
There's a way I can check that it's been taken attendance and share.
Yes, I need to post the results. I'm gonna be posting them.
And the list, we're gonna get the list homework, right? This next time.
Yes, so I'm gonna, finalize it this morning. I'm gonna this morning prepare the various pieces for this homework.
And it's again gonna be on the crowd.
Yes, the cloud server will be built. I'll build it for you, but people need to